The photo hit me harder than a punch. No warning, no build-up, just a casual scroll on a quiet Saturday morning. Still in my robe, watering the lawn like every other weekend for the last 27 years, coffee machine hissing behind me. Everything was routine, safe. Then my phone buzzed. A Facebook notification. She was in Dallas, supposedly at a sales conference. In the picture, she stood beside Bryce, the golden retriever of her office, all teeth and no spine. His arm was around her shoulder, hers rested on his chest, her head tilted toward him like they were posing for an engagement shoot. The caption read, "My real partner. Hashtag Workispan for life." 2 hearts. 57 likes. 16 comments. All nauseating. Love you too. Office goals. Finally, just say it already. I stared at it. Reread it. The first time, I laughed. That dry, breathless kind that dies halfway through because your body knows better than to waste oxygen. I didn't call her. Didn't text. Didn't yell. I walked inside, poured the rest of the coffee, opened the kitchen drawer, and pulled out the beige folder I'd prepped 3 weeks ago, after overhearing her whisper to Bryce late at night in the guest bathroom about how good he looked in that gray shirt, and imagine if we didn't have to sneak around. Inside that folder, petition, disclosures, property division sheet. My lawyer had called it clean and aggressive. Her post was still up. I typed a comment beneath it. Congratulations. The divorce papers are on the kitchen table. Posted. Logged out. Went back to watering the grass. She called that night, all fake cheerful syrup in her voice. Hey, babe, you're not actually mad, are you? It's a joke. Everyone does the whole work husband thing. Just laughs. I let her ramble. People hang themselves faster if you give them enough rope. Finally, I said, check the kitchen. Dead silence for 2 seconds. Then nervous laughter. You're joking, right? You didn't actually. Click. The war had begun. And she didn't even know I'd already won the first battle. Monday morning, 9:14 a.m., I was logged into my burner Gmail, the one I'd once used for Amazon returns and the occasional Craigslist find. Back when passwords were shared in our house like sugar in the pantry. One last glance at the screenshot, Alice draped over Bryce, my real partner, glowing in digital ink. My comment neatly pinned below it, like the final nail in a coffin. Subject line, inappropriate conduct. You decide. Attached. Screenshot of the Facebook post. Metadata showing the photo was posted during the Dallas conference. A short, polite note. Not sure what your internal policies are, but this appears to involve an employee in a supervisory role making public claims about a romantic relationship with a subordinate at a company-sponsored event. I'll let you decide how to proceed. No signature. No return address. I hit send. No dramatic grin. No sinister music playing. Just the soft click of a trap springing shut. I didn't expect an immediate response. HR moves slower than a glacier unless they smell liability. But I knew the scent was already in the air. At 3:42 p.m., my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Carter? This is Deborah from Hamilton and Klein HR. Could we ask you a few clarifying questions regarding a recent concern submitted to our department? I kept my tone calm. Of course, but I think the photo speaks for itself. She hesitated. That pregnant pause people take when they're looking at something they know is bad. Yes, we see that. By the time Alice came home that night, she looked rattled. Tossed her purse onto the counter, not in her usual lazy arc, but with a sharp drop, like it weighed more than she expected. You called my office? She said, trying for casual, failing badly. I didn't look up from my book. They called me. Her face tightened. You're blowing this out of proportion. I flipped a page. If that's true, you've got nothing to worry about. She stood there, studying me like she was trying to spot cracks in a wall. But she didn't realize the wall was already gone. What she was looking at now was a fortress, and every brick was about to be used against her. The trick to dismantling someone's world is patience. Not rage, not theatrics, patience. You take away pieces so slowly they don't realize the table's gone until their dinner's in their lap. Step 1 had been her job. Step 2 was the money. Our finances had always been shared, which in practice meant I earned it, she spent it, and I saved just enough to keep us afloat. She'd never bothered to learn the details because numbers weren't her thing. That week, I made them very much my thing. I called our bank, switched her credit card to an authorized use only status, a setting that meant she could swipe. But the moment I removed the account, it would vanish like smoke. I adjusted the online bill pay, so anything in her name routed to her personal account, not ours. And the big one, I froze the equity line she liked to treat as her personal shopping fund. 3 days later, she came home tossing shopping bags on the couch, humming like life was perfect. Then, from the kitchen, "Alice, your card declined." A pause. Then, "That's weird. I'll check it later." She didn't check. She didn't even bring it up. That told me two things. She thought it was temporary. She had no idea how deep this went. That Friday, I accidentally left my laptop open on an email chain with our accountant. The words asset reallocation bold in the subject line. She didn't mention it, but I caught her glancing at it twice during dinner. The best part? By the time she realized she was locked out of the financial castle, I'd already moved the gold. But money was only half the war. The other half? Reputation. And she was about to find out I wasn't just building walls. I was planting landmines. If money is the bloodstream of someone's life, reputation is the air. Take away the first, and they panic. Take away the second, and they suffocate. Alice had built her identity on being the golden girl in our social circle. She was the fun one, the hostess with the endless wine and the just between us gossip that made people feel included. The truth was, she was only charming when she felt superior to the people she was entertaining. That superiority came from two places, our house and my name. So I took both. I didn't evict her. That would have been too obvious. Instead, I made her want to leave. Subtle changes. Furniture she loved, in storage for repairs. The wine fridge, sold because it was leaking. Even her precious herb garden, the one she bragged about to guests, I accidentally overwatered until the basil was a swampy graveyard. It's amazing how fast a place stops feeling like home when the things you've claimed as yours start disappearing. Meanwhile, I started turning the lights on her private mess. Quietly, surgically. It began with her best friend Melissa. They'd been inseparable for years, bonded by book clubs and yoga classes they barely attended. I sent Melissa an anonymous email from a new account with two photos attached, one of Alice and Bryce in Dallas, one of Alice and Melissa's husband at a Christmas party 2 years ago. Bryce's hand was on her waist in the first, her hand was on his in the second. The subject line? Thought you'd want to know the timeline. No explanation. No signature. 2 days later, I came home to find Alice pacing in the driveway, phone glued to her ear, voice pitched high. "No, Melissa, that's insane. I have no idea where that came from." She spotted me, spun on her heel, and stormed inside. Strike one. Next was the neighborhood Facebook group. I'd been lurking there for years, mostly to check yard sale listings and avoid HOA drama. But now it became my stage. I posted a long, friendly warning. "Hi neighbors, just a heads up. A few folks have mentioned a man loitering around during the day while most of us are at work. Drives a black BMW, mid-30s, often seen near the Carter residence. If you spot him, please make sure he's supposed to be there." I attached a grainy, zoomed-in shot of Bryce walking up our driveway during one of Alice's work-from-home days. I didn't name him, of course. Plausible deniability is a beautiful thing, but the comments exploded. "Looks familiar. Think I saw him last week." Not cool. Strike two. The final touch was her work charity committee. Every year, Alice co-chaired their big fundraiser. It was her chance to wear a gown, boss people around, and get photographed for the local paper like she was auditioning for society royalty. I sent the committee chair an envelope, no return address, containing the HR email chain from my earlier report. A neat little paper trail showing their co-chair was under investigation for inappropriate conduct. She didn't get a call this time. She got an email. "Due to recent developments, we think it's best if you step back from your leadership role this year." That night, she slammed the bedroom door so hard a picture fell off the hallway wall. I was sitting in bed, reading. She stood there, cheeks flushed, eyes bright with fury. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I kept my voice even. "A few. You're trying to ruin my life." I closed the book, set it on the nightstand. "No, Alice. I'm just showing it to you in a different light." She stormed out without another word. The thing is, I wasn't finished. Because humiliation is temporary, I needed permanence. So I started planting seeds where it would hurt her most, her next chapter. Bryce wasn't the kind of guy to stick around once the drama outweighed the benefits. I knew it. She knew it. Even if she wouldn't admit it yet. I fed that clock. Quietly, carefully, I made sure rumors about her emotional volatility and money troubles drifted into the right ears at his company. Not enough to be traced, just enough to make him wonder if the prize was worth the baggage. I also pulled the nuclear option from the beige folder, the one piece of leverage I'd been holding back, a notarized statement from our accountant detailing every questionable personal expense she'd run through our joint accounts over the years. Shoes, spa retreats, even that conference in Dallas. All of it lined up next to dates she'd told me she was somewhere else. It wasn't for court. Not yet. It was for Bryce. A little package I'd mail the day she tried to move in with him, just to make sure the welcome mat was rolled up before she got there. And because I like symmetry, I left one final breadcrumb for her to find, a note taped inside her vanity drawer. Checkmate isn't the end of the game. It's just when one player stops pretending. A week later, she announced, in that clipped, too loud voice she uses when she wants to seem in control, that she was going to stay with a friend for a while. I didn't ask which one. She left in the Escalade, hair perfect, shoulders squared. She thought she was walking into a fresh start. She didn't see the storm waiting for her there. And I was already planning the final move, the one she'd never see coming until the board was bare. She left on a Thursday afternoon, suitcase in hand, pulling the door shut like she was sealing off a bad chapter. I watched from the living room window, not because I missed her, that part of me had died weeks ago, but because I wanted to see the exact moment the trap started to close. The Escalade turned out of the neighborhood, sunlight glinting off its chrome, and I knew she thought she was heading toward Bryce's arms and a life raft. What she didn't know was that I'd already made sure the raft had holes. I didn't move right away. I let the house sit in silence for a while, like a body cooling. Then I got to work. The first call was to the property management company that handled the loft downtown. The one Alice had her name on from before we were married. The one she always swore she'd get around to selling, but never did. I told them she'd authorized me to list it, sent over the forged email I'd crafted a month earlier using her old Hotmail account. The one she forgot was still logged in on our shared desktop. By the end of the day, the loft was on the market. The moment it sold, the proceeds, thanks to a little paperwork shuffle I'd arranged, would go toward paying down marital debts she didn't even know she had. Debts she'd unwittingly signed for when she pushed her signature onto every refinance form I put in front of her over the years. It wasn't illegal. It was just timing. The second move was social. I printed a stack of flyers. Nothing flashy, just black and white paper with a photo of Bryce and Alice from that Dallas trip, his arm around her, the "My Real Partner" caption underneath. No commentary, no phone number, just the image, clear as day. Late that night, I drove by Bryce's condo building and slipped one under every door in the lobby. People love a scandal, especially in upscale complexes where gossip is currency. I didn't have to add a word. The photo did all the talking. Then came the professional hit. Alice's industry was small, incestuous even, marketing executives who all floated between the same handful of agencies. I knew because I'd been to the Christmas parties, the networking mixers, the charity galas where they all clinked glasses and pretended they weren't trying to poach each other's clients. I created an anonymous LinkedIn account posing as a concerned industry colleague and started sending direct messages to a few key people. Just a heads up, there's chatter about Alice Carter being involved in an ongoing HR investigation related to workplace conduct. Thought you'd want to know before considering her for any future projects. No details, no accusations that could be pinned on me. Just enough to make her name radioactive in a space where reputation is everything. By Saturday, my phone lit up with a message from a number I didn't recognize. "Alice, what did you do?" I didn't reply. "Alice, Bryce won't answer my calls. He says I'm too much drama." There it was. The first crack in her voice, even through text. A few minutes later, "Alice, I'm coming home so we can talk." I typed, then deleted half a dozen responses before settling on. "House is being deep cleaned. Best if you stay elsewhere for now." That was true. I'd hired a crew, not to clean but to inventory. Every piece of jewelry I'd ever bought her, every designer handbag, every decorative thing she claimed was hers, but that I'd actually paid for, all photographed, appraised, and quietly locked away in a storage unit under my name. On Monday, the coup de grace fell without me lifting another finger. Melissa, the same best friend I'd sent those anonymous photos to, posted a cryptic status on Facebook. Funny how some people preach loyalty but shop around in everyone else's closet. Hashtag done. Hashtag some things you can't wash off. Half the comments were mutual friends. Spill. Oh, I know exactly who you're talking about. Wow, bold. Alice's social stock dropped like a stone. By midweek, she'd stopped trying to call me and started emailing instead, each one shorter than the last. First it was we need to talk. Then can you at least send me my clothes? Finally, just please. I didn't answer any of them. It was Friday night when I made the last move. The one that would seal it forever. I mailed Bryce a package. Inside, a printout of the HR email chain. A copy of our joint account statements highlighting her business trips. The notarized expense report from our accountant. And a single post-it note that read, "You're welcome." I didn't need to see his reaction. I just needed to know that when she showed up at his door, and she would, she'd find it closed. The next morning, I woke to a text from a mutual acquaintance. Saw Alice at the wine bar last night. Alone. Looked bad. I pictured her sitting there in the same corner booth she used to drag me to, swirling a glass of overpriced Merlot, scanning the room for someone to validate her. No one would. Not anymore. Because the thing about people like Alice is that they build their world like a house of mirrors. Every reflection carefully arranged, every angle flattering. All it takes is one crack for the whole thing to shatter. And I'd given her more than one. That afternoon, I walked through the quiet house. My house. The beige folder was back in the kitchen drawer, empty now. Every document inside it either used or no longer needed. The war was over, not with an explosion, but with a series of precise cuts until there was nothing left to bleed. I poured myself a coffee, stepped outside, and watered the lawn. Same as the morning this started. But this time, the air tasted clean. Somewhere across town, Alice was learning the hardest truth. It's not the betrayal that ruins you. It's when the person you betrayed stops playing the fool. And I had stopped a long time ago. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that people like Alice never walk away quietly. They can't. They need to be the hero in their own story, even if the rest of the world knows they're the villain. It took her about a week to regroup. A week of licking her wounds, reshaping the narrative in her head until she could tell herself she was the victim. Then she struck. The first move was legal. A thick manila envelope showed up in my mailbox, her lawyer's letterhead stamped across the top. Inside, a formal notice that Alice intended to contest the divorce on grounds of emotional abuse and financial control. She wanted the house, half my retirement, spousal support, and reputational damages. I read it twice, slowly, letting each word settle. Then I set it down and smiled. Because here's the thing. The best counter to a snake is to let it bite and then show the antidote. Her claims weren't just false. They were a gift. I'd been collecting my own receipts for years, long before Bryce ever entered the picture. Not because I expected this exact scenario, but because I've always believed in keeping records. Old texts where she admitted to borrowing thousands from our joint account for personal shopping. Emails from her apologizing for losing her temper and throwing a wine glass across the room. Voicemails where she slurred threats into my phone at 2 a.m., thinking I'd pick up. All neatly labeled. All backed up in two separate places. I called my lawyer, Marcus. He chuckled halfway through my rundown. "She's playing checkers," he said. "You've got the entire chessboard mapped out." I gave him permission to respond in kind, aggressive counterclaims. Evidence packages ready to be dropped like hammers if she wanted to drag this into open court. The second move she tried was social rehabilitation. She started showing up at every local event she could find, charity brunches, art shows, yoga classes in the park. Smiling, hugging, leaning into conversations just enough for people to hear her sigh and say, "It's been such a hard time, but I'm trying to stay strong." I knew because people told me. Some out of loyalty, some out of pure gossip. "She says you were controlling," one old neighbor confided over coffee. "She's hinting you might have had anger issues," another whispered. I didn't correct them. I didn't defend myself. Instead, I'd shrug and say, "We all have our own perspectives, I guess." Because here's the dirty little secret of gossip. It dies faster when you don't feed it. And when the storyteller realizes you're not fighting back, they start to wonder if maybe they've been sold a bill of goods. The third move, and the one she clearly thought was her ace, was Bryce. Against all logic, she crawled back to him. Maybe he'd softened after the sting of those flyers wore off. Maybe she convinced him she was the wrong party. Either way, they were seen together again. This time at a rooftop bar, her hand on his chest like she was claiming territory. And this I had been waiting for. Because the package I'd sent Bryce weeks ago, that wasn't everything. It was just enough to make him keep his distance. But now, if he was going to let her back in, he needed the full education. So I sent him part 2, a slim USB drive in an unmarked envelope. Inside, security camera footage of her bringing another man into our house while I was out of town 2 years ago. Screenshots of her messaging a third man on Instagram while she was with Bryce. A single photo of her in a hotel lobby with a suitcase, timestamped during a weekend she told Bryce she was homesick. I didn't include a note this time. The files spoke for themselves. 2 nights later, Alice's car was back in our driveway. She sat inside for nearly half an hour before finally knocking on the door. I opened it halfway, leaning against the frame. "You win," she said. "No makeup, hair tied back, eyes ringed red." "This isn't a game," I replied. She laughed bitterly. "Could have fooled me. You've been 10 steps ahead since day one." I didn't answer. I just let the silence stretch. "Finally," she said, "I need some of my things." "They're in storage," I said. "You'll get them after the settlement's final." Her mouth tightened. "You think you've destroyed me, but I'll be fine. I've survived worse." I nodded. "Maybe. But the difference is, now everyone knows who you are when you survive it." She blinked, just once, and I saw it. That flicker of realization. She'd lost control of the narrative. When she left, I didn't watch her drive away this time. I sat at the kitchen table and thought about how far we'd come from that Saturday morning with the Facebook photo. Back then, she thought I'd be stunned into inaction, that my silence meant weakness. Now, my silence meant strategy. And she'd learned the hard way that strategy outlasts chaos every time. 2 weeks later, Marcus called. "She's dropped the abuse claims," he said. "Wants to settle quickly." I leaned back in my chair, looking out the window at the lawn. "And the house? You keep it. No spousal support. She's walking away with just her personal account and her car." It was more generous than I'd planned to be, but I didn't argue. Because sometimes victory isn't about squeezing every drop from the other side. It's about making sure they never have the leverage to come back. That night, I poured a drink and sat on the back porch, the cool air carrying the faint scent of cut grass. I thought about the last few months, the traps, the countermoves, the way she tried to spin every loss into a temporary setback. And I realized something. She'd never stopped telling herself she was the hero. But the difference now was, no one else would believe it. She'd spend the rest of her life trying to rebuild mirrors that would never quite fit together again. And me? I'd stop wasting my time looking for my reflection in someone else's glass. Because once you've beaten someone at their own game, the smartest thing you can do is stop playing entirely. Once the settlement was inked, most people would have poured a stiff drink and moved on. But I'd been living in her blast radius for years. I knew her patterns. Given enough time, she'd try to claw her way back into relevance. So I laid the fuse months in advance. It started with the charity gala committee, the same one that had already booted her. I volunteered my time, donated just enough money to make my name worth mentioning in their newsletters. Then I quietly suggested a new initiative, transparency in fund management. Everyone nodded along, thinking it was about clean books. But in reality, it meant combing through old events for irregularities. Guess whose name popped up attached to a mysterious $4,200 hospitality expense 3 years ago? Paid to a Dallas hotel. Same weekend she'd claimed to be in Chicago with the girls. It wasn't fraud, but it was enough to quietly ban her from all future committee work. One door shut forever. Next came her inner circle. She'd burned Melissa, sure, but there were still 2 or 3 loyalists who'd stuck by her. Women who lived for wine nights and whispered grievances about controlling husbands. So I sent each of them a small package, one of Alice's own handwritten notes from over the years. Things she'd scribbled in birthday cards or thank you letters, each one containing some petty jab or private insult about the very person receiving it. I didn't sign the packages. I didn't have to. By the end of the month, her circle looked more like a dot. The coup de grace came from an unexpected angle. Through a mutual contact, I learned Alice was applying for a marketing director role at a mid-size firm in the next city over. She'd made it through 2 interviews and was 1 reference check away from an offer. So I reached out to the hiring manager, anonymously, of course, and provided a heads-up packet, HR documentation from her last job. A timeline of her Dallas trip versus company expense reports. A public records search showing the settlement terms from our divorce. They didn't need more than that. 2 days later, the position was no longer available. Here's the part she never saw coming. I invited her to lunch. Neutral ground, a cafe in the middle of town. She showed up wary, dressed like she wanted to project moving on. New haircut, oversized sunglasses. "What do you want, Carter?" she asked, not even sitting down yet. I slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a printout of a property listing for a small, tidy house in a not-so-glamorous neighborhood. Paid in full. In her name. She frowned. "What is this?" I sipped my coffee. "That's yours. No strings. I bought it after the settlement closed." She stared at me, trying to read the angle. "Why?" I leaned in. "Because now you'll always know you didn't beat me. I didn't just survive you, Alice. I came out ahead. And I can afford to be generous." Her jaw tightened. That's the thing about people like her. Kindness wounds them deeper than cruelty. Because cruelty they can fight. Kindness just proves they've lost. She left without finishing her drink. I never heard from her again. It wasn't about the money, or the house, or even the revenge. It was about balance. About making sure the story ended on my terms. Because when you've lived in someone's shadow, the sweetest victory is stepping into the light and watching them disappear in it.